Futa Jalon, mountainous region of west-central Guinea consisting of a series of steppe sandstone plateaus with many picturesque trenches and gorges, serves as the watershed for some of West Africa's greatest rivers, such as River Gambia, River Senegal, and River Niger. The Futa Jalon Plateau provided a passageway for all migrations from the hinterland to the coast. At the same time, they were a crucial transition zone between the Sudan and the western reaches of Senegambia. Futa Jalon is a reflection of the pre-colonial leaders that enabled the leaders of Futa Imamate to establish connection to Kaabu, thereby establish their link to Fourier region and Upper Gambia Valley up to Sankulekunda, which eventually facilitated the establishment of Futa Imamate around the 17th century.
Massive migration of Fulas from Futa Jalon and the establishment of Futa Imamate in the 17th century coincided with the transatlantic slave trading system that legitimized Futa to have control over the existing trade routes. The participation of Futa in the transatlantic slave trading system made Futa to assume an active role in the global economic system from the latter part of 18th century up to the middle of the 19th century.
The name Futa Jalon came from its early Jalinke inhabitants. The region was first organized as a separate political entity as a result of the Fulbe and the Malika Jihad led by Karamoko Alpha and Ibrahim Osori in the late 1720s.
Ko ɓearani ko fof kadi argol Fuuta ko pewɗo Saydna Umar ibn Khattab ko ne pewɗon ko ɗon goɗɗo ittano yo ar ɓe silmina leyɗe ɗen ɓe ari Afrique ko ɓe Afrique Nord ɓe Afrique de l'Ouest donc ɓeɗo ari Afrique de l'Ouest. Saydna Umar nuli ko woni misra ande wonno misra kanko naɓano ɗon ko fewno tuma o naɓi goɗɗo inteɗo Amr ibn al-As woyni boy yo ɓe yaadu e woɓɓe ɓe manno ɓe fii l'islam on waɗugol yimɓe l'islam on ɓe yaadi e maɓɓe woɓe yaw ha ɓe yaw Afrique on ɓe ndaara yimɓe ko honno woniri toon so tawi ɓen tigi no silmi ɓe ɗumanno ɓe ɓallitoɓe tawi ɓen tigi silma ɓe waɗa loi islamique on kadi ɓe silmina ɓe inna ɓen tigi ɓe wolno ɓe fii l'islam on loi ji ɗin fof muɗum on tawa ɓe suɓo si ɓe jaɓɓi silmude probléme o ala si ɓe jaɓali l'islam on ko inni koye on tigi koye haɓe ko on tigi ɗumanni bottina.
As a Muslim theocratic state, Futa Jalon dominated both central and the coastal Guinea until it became part of the French colony of Guinea. Timbo, 42 kilometers northeast of Mamu, was the seat of the Fulani emirs until its occupation by French troops in 1896.
Tuba ko ben ari labe wana lawol gotol wana labi didi wana labi tati ko non harende ko kambe alfa ya fewto parce que alfa ya salibe ko alfa ya woni jabali ko non be ari ton kay bari ton wana ande gotol wana didi wana tati be jodi ke be yewtibe nan to ndirale ko non tuba ko ben kay argol mabbe ari alfa ya no ton alfa ya ko mo ton jibina ko non tuba ko ben ar te ado alfa ya laminobe ton be fo wobbe buy fa nani fi tuba ko ben yewtidali e mabbe wobbe yewtidi e mabbe wobbe yibe wobbe yialibe.
Modern Futa Jalon is mainly inhabited by Muslim Fulani peoples who had testy-resistant Dama cattle. Jalinkes were the first settlers in Futa. Those Jalinkes were farmers who cultivated mainly coos. In Futa, most of the towns and villages and even the streams were named by the Jalinkes.
Lady Futa Jalon ko lady Guinea Conakry woni. Ko non di lady ko lady ndi anduda ko jalunke be jeyndi. Ko dum addi Futa Jalon. Ko dum woni rewbe ben jalun bibbe jalunkobe ben be tubinta be resabe. Si be resibe si be bellandi ke be odo men futinibe jalunkobe ben. ko ɗum woni Fuuta Jallo men fuutiniɓe jalunkoɓe ɓen.
In the 15th century, Koli Tengala led the Fulbe Fulani migration into both banks of Senegambia. They crossed the Gambia and conquered several territories and then established a Dinyanke dynastic rule from the 15th to the 19th century. This migration from north, east, and south made both banks of the Gambia as important settlements for Fullers in the 19th century. According to Alaji Malado Jallo, the first Fuller who settled in Futa Jalon region was Koli Tengala around the 17th century. He further asserted that the Jalinkes gave a portion of the river to the Fullers in order for their cattle to have access to water. Integrated into the Atlantic trading system, Futa Jalon underwent a profound economic, political, and social transformation which led to Muslim revolution at the start of the 18th centuries.
The state Islamic of Futa Jalon lasted 170 years. The years starting 1727, hitande 1727 at the victory of Talansa. It ended at the Battle of Poredaka, where the last sovereign of Futa Jalon, Bokar Biro, was defeated and killed. The 4th November 1896, le 14 novembre 1896. Et the coming years, on 6 February 1897, was signed the last treaty with Futa Jalon with French, that included the Islamic State, included in Guinea Française, in French Guinea. It was the end of the sovereignty of Futa Jalon, but lasted 170 years.
It was generally reported that in Timbituni, the 9 provinces laid down the following rules: that anybody who invade Kankalabe would face no charges. Every province should respect the poor Muslims, and everybody should go back and wage jihad or holy war in their respective regions.
Oyi anna sarankoɓe ɓen hari ɓe ton kono noon hari kadi ɓe ɓanni kele mansaɓe e nder leydi ndi. Kele mansaɓe ɓen no woni wano Samori en, wano Kewali en, wano Alpha Yaya en, ko watti e mum. Kono noon portoɓe si arino ko ɓen ɗon ɓe wonno wadde ƴangal fiyo ɓe hettu Fuuta Jallo ga. Joni noon si ɓe hettino ɓen ɓe aray tum ɓe rewa ɓe feƴƴa e nder haali pulal. Kono laati noon ɓen ɗon enen ɗuuɗano marde pinka. Ko deftere e torare nden e jokkere en ɗan ɗon wonno doole meɗen ɗen. On faami. Joni noon koye tippude ɗum tawɗen e ɓayta enen e mara doole foti jaka ɗo yo en tumbonir. Si en tumbodi en haldi en fotti, inchallah yimɓe 10 no ɓuri finkari wotiri. Yimɓe temedere wonɓe hunde wotere nden no ɓuri ko wiyete baju ka o.
The first jihad against the non-Muslim was held in Fokumba. Charno Samb of Beria, a grand Marabu, recited the Quran for the Fuller warriors and told them that they would win the Futa Kaabu war. Each of the 9 provinces were asked to choose a warrior, and they were all tasked to throw their arrows at an object which was to be hit by all the 9 warriors. There and then, the Fullers predicted that as far as Futa Kaabu war was concerned, the victory was assured for them.
Kenno Mama Samba Mombeya. He was the first Fulani to translate Quran in Fulani. At the time, Elijah Martar was there, who said, you have not to translate Arabic language, that is the language of a prophet, to a prophanic language as Fulani. He said, I have to translate to all the people the precept of the Holy Quran in their language, so make them able to understand very well the structure and the meaning of Quran. It is for that in his poem he explained, miɗo janturi himmude haala pular kono newnani faamu nanir jaɓugol sabu neɗɗo ko haala mu'um newoto nde o faaminire ko wi'a to i'al yoga fuuta no tuuɗa ka janginira arabiya ɓe lutta e sikkitagol tuugiiɗo e sikke e kuuɗe dewal wonata woni konngol ma kuugal no ɗaɓɓa ko laaɓi ko sikke ala e mu'um yo jangu pularji gorel.
Throughout the 19th century, the powerful Alpha of Labe organized regular slave raids against isolated communities in the area from Nyokolo all the way to Upper Gambia. At a very early stage, following the effective occupation of Rio Nones and Rio Pongo by the French, Labe province and the Futa Jalon regime in general became primarily interested in controlling the coastal region between Rio Nones and Rio Jeba. Migrants from the Senegambia hinterland, especially from the Futa Jalon plateau, gradually settled in Kaabu and Foria between Rio Grande and Rio Jeba. People moved from Futa Jalon to the coast because the plateau was becoming increasingly overpopulated, whilst its natural resources base was shrinking. That migration also meant an escape from oppressive livestock tax was an added incentive. Indeed, a notable aspect of the Hubo movement, which developed into the Futa Jalon hinterland from 1850, was the migration of population from all social strata. Taking their livestock and other property, they went to settle on the outskirts of Futa, far from the reach of provincial or central regimes. An example was the Jihi movement. Its members settled east of Timbo in Hili Fitaba. After their migration, there emerged a revolution led by Modu Iliasu in Timbi, Medina. The Alpha of Labe crushed the uprising with great severity. Modu Iliasu's followers dispersed, heading for the coast, which had become a meeting place for large numbers of people from the Senegambia hinterland. Futa Jalon expansionism coincided with a deep political, social, and economic crisis in the ancient Kaabu kingdom.
Following the abolition of transatlantic slave trading system, in which Futa Imamate was a dominant force. However, with the emergence of legitimate trading system in which Kaabu was benefiting, Futa Imamate was determined to challenge the power of Kaabu in order to connect itself to Foria, Nyokolo region, and Upper Gambian Valley.
Kaabu was considerably weakened by rebellions in the outlying provinces and by conflicts dividing the military aristocracy.
Kiramakanga ngamui koe borna mandi. Anada. Ay dinke nan sobe ko danol betamola wulo kon. Inata je musol bota banku dinko kon. Timba kolon kon. Isungu du karfafil. Danol ye rafoye mita. Anate futu. Ay dinke nan soto. Iko telamuro ko dinke nano. Ay banko tala wollita. Banku nani ni ille commencé à Kansala. Mana wala mu dinke kewat. Sama mbono. Wala sita sama. Bajana mbono ma wala sita pachana. Tumani wala sita sumakuna wala be dindiwul. Man Kansala kelo na muleka wulle kata ke waindo la donka no mo le fonu ta ke sama kana balula. Karena ngamai tel Kaabu manding man siar Kaabu yani sanji kemilu sanji tanan. Jadi Kansala kelo na manak. Ko man siar sanji kemilu sanji tanan. mandingol mansala Kansala kelo ko comme hakke o le emito ni sanyi kamilul sanyi tanani ita balula mola fona semboka ibata la diate nyami yaje futa eno hakke o le emito.
Kaabu was impoverished by the loss of income from the slave trade and by the new commitment of peasant and Muslim communities to export agriculture.
Kaabu so ninke sansan be sumakunda da mani nima yasuto. Ikai nima altara ndulanjube ko ka safedi mbonde kadi keola ni adi mola ni kilo be bulo kono ni afaya to kumara ita be kelo kala founder mande we ka fo le ni mo atara le funi man tan ni nan mun so tata ko biri itara kelo la e muso ni mirna ko ngara ya samana jo musoro ka fay lo ngi banora biri ya na ti jang ada man ka nyo sura jo yala man se keona ra futu ay ndinke filasoto ani di muskili lo minimum lo midoma ani har nima bon adinke o to mu lo minimum comme ay nima yasoto e ko lo minimum adoma fana lo midoma o fana nima yasoto har ni mu musole ro ngadi muso o fana nar nima wulu o hari ka fole har nima.
The constitutional system in Kaabu required that anybody who comes from the line of Tramang must actually be eligible to succeed the throne of Kaabu. However, some of the women who actually got married to the aristocrats and the elites of the royal families sometimes were not always women who came from the royal line. One of the popular name among these women was called Lombi. Lombi was actually married by one of the kings of Sumakunda, who was actually exploited, was doing all the poundings until the entire community recognized that the pounding assignment given to this woman was about to kill her. People were saying that Kuda Mbelombi Fala, meaning the pestle that was used to pound was killing Lombi, a slave woman, as a demonstration of the internal exploitation of the slave woman who got married to the Kaabu royals in Sumakunda. This is the bahoba tree where Lombi used to place her pestle against after pounding.
An additional problem was the revolt among the Fulakunda minorities. Recent converts to Islam, they were ready to solicit outside aid in their determination to throw off the Soyinke yoke. It was in this combination of factors that led to the disastrous confrontation of Kansala, where the Futa Jalon and the Kaabu regimes fought to a state of mutual exhaustion.
Futa dunta lunji mal lajang tene lung talantang dunta wol lajang bay dun dum fane maymade parce que la moro ni fa koy nal tada Kaabu al folo kani ala abati yima ni alma ina tay janjantale mune ko mo fitin so manda juno mo so fundita tato kono abe tamanta matada filoji si furan ko sir adunta ko amsudo nyola ko sila wala henen sir banton wole karota man keba fulo ke bal ka fa ne kuda ina ta yo lapin fa yafa kabre yo fa kalaji e ko mo ki janke wal ko heyal manyen ne male ala atu jitel folo emma akoy bad bit naale ma bita band kontonsio kontensa mo fila funtindi fo futa be dunda kidi mun ko bon tanana nim fila be Kansala ko no jam jinnew lo kidi mun ko janjanda be janke wala hansini mota fala jannu janke wala la frewtu mota fala muso janna la fro kumba samba mota fala jalo wali be janna frewtu kabala buna kataya jala mando yeman tawlot.
of Labe spearheaded Futa Jalon's expansionist drive into Kaabu and Foria. It organized a long series of raids before the Battle of Barakalong in Sankula in 1850. The battle signaled the start of large-scale hostilities between the two states. Claiming that the time was ripe for a holy war, Alpha Ibrahim, a provincial chief of Labe, raised an army of nearly 6,000 men for an assault on the Koreng Nyaling Sonko. The Tata of Barakalong, Kaabu's strongest rampart, was finally conquered after a long siege.
Otumo futa man kana Sankula mohiman Sankula manole ba Sankula la kolen balo ke fati balo Sankula yo bre ngalen fa sa otumo lo mo futa bre ko ngalen fa le na bari amude jam fa sin ko sa ngale do ko mun ke jeli ya ko sa futa ya lo ngalen man tan do ndo sai sa bari tombo ba Sonko be siri man sa seran kam sai kile bulo dara kata kam kala Sankula bre ko kam bre ko ma akelo du batale.
The Battle of Barakalong was followed by a lull lasting from 1851 to 1858. It ended abruptly when the combined forces of Alpha Ibrahima of Labe and Babakar Sadasi of Bundu once again went on the offensive, laying siege to the Tata of Tabajang. The defeat of its defender, Sisan Faranding, opened the gates of the capital Kansala to the armies of Futa Jalon.
Kansala kama na sisa frandi mu be man kanji e man silo so no wala pour que dum ye silo kala sinya ura be murun la bay ko kansala kilo lo janke wala kele talulu njonga kilo mu kala man siro ko yo bi sisa frandi man so sisa mi na la janke wala kan lafte se ma ko sojoroto pour silani mol kele ko la tinye bulu janke wala kan ko man da sojar dile la ni man hañi isa fonye aka nimboda je futa be nu la kansala aka boje Berisisa frande silo di ani buran kaba obu tumba buran kaba ni sisa frande silo di don futa duntala.
In this crucial period, Kaabu was already considerably weakened by the gradual loss of its outlying provinces, internecine conflicts between the remaining provinces, and power struggles between the two royal lineages. The civil war in Kantora was aggravated by warfare between Sankolla and Tumana, as well as fighting between Europina and Jimara. On this campaign, Al-Mami Omar was accompanied by the majority of the provincial chiefs. Noteworthy among them was Alpha Ibrahim, chief of the Dual of Labe, supported by the army of Al-Mami of Bundu, Babakar Sadasi. Janke Wali, overwhelmed by the sheer numbers of his enemy, holed up in the Tata of Kansala together with all the warriors of Kaabu, determined to resist to the last man.
Janke Wali, benangim owarti to. Owarti woɓɓe hinni o fettin condi pinka ko jogino kon o wa ɗum ɗo warino woɓɓe hinni ko yawɓe ɓen warino ko ɓe artata oya Almami Umaru o maayi e laawol oya lanɗo Labe on mo wonduno on Alpha Ibrahima on ɗon arti Fuuta donc ɗon ɗen Kansala ko ɗum ɓeyni Turuban aray ko haala maɓɓe kam haala ngabunken.
The resulting siege of Kansala was exceedingly bloody. Both armies suffered heavy casualties. The carnage was later remembered as Turubang, meaning a hecatomb inside the Tata of Kansala. Outnumbered by his assailants from Futa Jalon, Janke Wali preferred to blow himself by setting fire to his power kegs and perishing in the flames with his soldiers and wives, determined to honor the Nyancho code by resisting the invaders to his last breath. The battle ended in the mutual annihilation of the antagonist. Thus ended the Kaabu regime, one of the oldest in Senegambia. It was one also that symbolized an outstanding style, the Chaddo ethnic battered by the Muslim Jihad just before the triumph of colonial imperialism. After the defeat of Kaabu, Alpha Ibrahim married the Nyancho princess Kumanchu Sane, the daughter of Janke Wali Sane. She later gave birth to the renowned Alpha Yahya, who, according to the narration from the elders, inherited his outstanding courage from his Kaabu ancestors.
When Jankewali was defeated, the Alpha Molabe, Alpha Ibrahima, they took the daughter of Jankewali who was killed, Kumanchu, this Kumanchu is the mother of the last sovereign Almamid of Labe, Alpha Yaya. For that, you have a very good relation between Futa Jalon and Kaabu.
Jankewali, the last king of Kaabu, earned his place as the quintessential warrior hero in the tradition of the Nyancho aristocracy. Traditional chronicles on the victory side agree that the conflict was horrific and that Kaabu's resistance was intense. They recall that Kaabu, though going down in defeat, succeeded in destroying any future Futa Jalon might have hoped to have, because the flower of its youth died in the flames of Kansala along with their enemies. There was a Pyrrhic victory, if ever there was one. To the victor fell no spoils, for on the way back from Kansala, the Futa Jalon army, taking with it nearly 15,000 prisoners, were decimated by yellow fever. Almami Omar himself did not live to celebrate his victory. He died of a disease on his way home. And shortly thereafter, it was his country's turn to face an invading enemy, France. Right after the Kansala expedition, conditions grew ripe for the rise of the Fuladu kingdom under Alpha Molo Ege, the new king of Kaabu. In the latter part of the 19th century, when the colonial regime spread their tentacles on the basis of the geographical realities in Africa with the hope that Africans would one day unite against them, they consequently partitioned Africa and dismembered some of its regions and made them tiny enclaves in which Africans could not come together to establish greater force against any foreign domination.
During the colonization, the French gave Kaabu to Portugal. Before it, Kaabu belonged to the Diwal of Labe, and at the time also, Firdu was a vassal area of the Diwal of Labe. Even in the area of Boke, the kingdom of Landuma was a vassal state of Labe and Futa Jalon.
Pole slaves freshly converted to Islam and fighting alongside the armies of Futa Jalon and Bundu played an important role in the fall of Kaabu, since the rebellion of the kingdom's oppressed lower strata undermines its internal cohesion. The leader of this internal revolution was Molo Ege. Born to a Manding slave father and a Pole mother, he took the name Alpha Molo after converting to Islam and finishing his religious studies in Futa Jalon. Back home, he channeled the discontent of the Fulakunda inhabitants of Firdu province into a movement under the Islamic banner. His forces were active alongside the Futa Jalon army in the war against Kaabu, his motivation having more to do with national interest than with religious or ethnic solidarity. Starting in Firdu, he organized a rebellion of Pole slaves known as Fulajongo in Tumana and Kantora provinces. In the process, he created the nucleus of Great Fuladu, which expanded steadily all the way to Foria. He obtained help from Futa Jalon, which continued to conduct punitive expeditions into Kaabu until 1878.
The ultimate erosion of Manding political force and the eventual emergence of Fulani political dominance confirmed the victory of Futa Imamate in the Battle of Kansala. Ultimately, this reaffirmed that Futa Imamate attained victory over Kaabu.